The parking lot at Costco on a Saturday morning is basically a war zone, and Petra knew that better than anyone. She had been circling the same row for 11 minutes. 11, she had counted. Her coffee was getting cold in the cup holder. Her list was sitting open on her phone, and she had exactly 90 minutes before she needed to be back across town to help her mother set up for a birthday lunch that Petra had not technically agreed to attend, but had somehow ended up organizing anyway. And then she saw it, a spot, third from the end close to the cart return. Perfect. She flicked on her signal and waited as the silver SUV, in the spot slowly, painfully backed out. Petra kept her eyes on that rectangle of gray asphalt like it was the last seat on a lifeboat. The SUV was almost out. Almost. And then a black pickup truck came from the opposite direction and swung straight in. Petra sat there for a second. Just sat there. Then she pulled up beside the truck, rolled down her window and said, as calmly as she could manage, "Excuse me, I was waiting for that spot." The man who got out of the truck was tall, somewhere in his mid-30s, wearing a gray jacket and carrying a reusable bag that said some brewery name on the side. He turned and looked at her with the kind of expression that said he had heard her and was choosing to interpret her words charitably before responding. "I didn't see a signal," he said. "I had my signal on for over a minute. I came from the other direction. I genuinely didn't see you. You genuinely didn't look." He paused. Something shifted in his face, not quite an apology, but close. "I'll move if you want. There's a car behind me now. Forget it." And she drove away, already hating how her hands were tight on the wheel, already knowing she was going to be replaying that exchange for the rest of the afternoon. She parked 4 rows over in the spot nobody wanted because it was next to the cart corral, and she went in and did her shopping and told herself it didn't matter, and mostly believed it. She did not think about the man with the brewery bag again, until 4 weeks later, when she walked into her parents' kitchen, and her mother said, with the exact tone of voice that meant something was coming, that Petra was not going to like, "I invited someone for dinner tonight. A friend of your Aunt Ruth Ann's. He's very nice. He just moved to the city from Halifax, and I thought it would be kind to include him." Petra set down the wine she had brought and looked at her mother. Her mother looked back with the careful innocence of someone who has been planning this for longer than they are letting on. "Mom, he's just one person, Petra. It's just dinner. It's a setup. It's dinner with a lovely young man who doesn't know many people here yet and whose aunt happens to be one of my closest friends." Her mother was already turning back to the stove. "His name is Lawson. He works in urban planning. He coaches hockey on weekends." Petra poured herself a glass of water and stood by the sink and thought about how her mother had been doing this for 3 years now. Ever since Petra had ended things with Paul, in a quiet, steady, relentless way that Petra had come to think of as very loving and also slightly exhausting. She had set Petra up with a dentist who talked exclusively about teeth, a financial planner who turned out to already be engaged, and a man named Trevor who had been perfectly fine in every measurable way and with whom Petra had felt absolutely nothing. "I'm just here for Dad's birthday," Petra said. "And dinner," her mother said pleasantly, "which starts at 6. She heard the front door open at 5:53. She heard her father's voice in the hallway, welcoming and warm, and another voice underneath it, and she stood in the living room holding her wine glass and told herself it was fine. She was 32 years old. She could have dinner with a stranger. She turned around when she heard footsteps in the doorway, and there he was. Gray jacket, brewery bag nowhere in sight, but the same face, same height, same expression of someone doing a reasonable social assessment of the room. He saw her at the exact same moment she saw him. She watched his eyes do the thing she imagined her own eyes were doing, which was a rapid and somewhat chaotic process of recognition and disbelief and recalibration. "Costco," he said. "The parking spot," she said. There was a beat of silence that felt much longer than it was. "You two know each other?" her father asked. "Not exactly," Petra said. "We've met," Lawson said carefully. Her mother appeared from the kitchen doorway with the expression of someone who has hit an unexpected complication but is committed to the plan. "Wonderful then. Less awkward. Come sit down, everyone. Dinner was not a disaster." That was the most honest thing Petra could say about it. It was not a disaster. Lawson was polite and easy to talk to in a surface way. He answered her parents' questions without either showing off or deflecting. And he made her father laugh twice, which was not nothing because her father was not an easy laugh. But underneath all of that was the parking lot. Petra kept thinking about how sure she had been that he was just another person in a hurry, who didn't think the rules applied to him, who didn't think about the person waiting on the other side. And sitting across from him now, watching him ask her mother about the recipe for the soup, she felt the dissonance of it. sitting somewhere in her chest like a pebble in a shoe. After dinner, her father put on the hockey game, and her mother somehow engineered a situation where Petra and Lawson were both in the kitchen pretending to help clean up. "I really didn't see your signal," he said, handing her a bowl to dry. "I know you probably believe that." "You don't?" She thought about it, actually thought about it, standing there with a dish towel. "I think it's possible. The angle from that direction would have made it easy to miss. I was annoyed at the time." "You had every right to be annoyed." "I know," she said. And then, because it was true, she added, "But you did offer to move the truck, for whatever that's worth at this point." "It's worth something," she said. And she meant it more than she expected to. He laughed, just briefly, and it was a good laugh, the kind that wasn't performing anything. "Lawson Beatty," he said and held out his hand. "Petra Wyndham," she said and shook it. Her mother appeared in the kitchen doorway at that exact moment with an expression that she was not bothering to hide. Petra pointed at her. "Do not say anything." "I wasn't going to say a word," her mother said, and went back to the living room looking profoundly satisfied. Petra and Lawson exchanged a look over the dish rack, and she felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was tight. He texted her 3 days later. She had given him her number because her mother had essentially created a situation where not giving it would have required active rudeness. That was what she told herself on the drive home. She had given it to be polite. The text said, "There's a Costco near my office. I've been parking in the back rows as penance." She stared at it for a moment. Then she typed back, "That seems reasonable. How long does the sentence last? My Aunt Ruth Ann says I have to be nicer to strangers, so probably ongoing. Your aunt sounds sensible. She and your mom have been friends for 30 years. I'm starting to think this was inevitable." Petra read that last message twice. She put her phone down. She picked it back up. "Probably," she typed. "Doesn't mean you get the parking spot." He sent back a single emoji, a laughing face. She found herself smiling at her phone, like a person who had entirely forgotten to be guarded, and then she put it face down on the coffee table and went to make tea. They went for coffee the following weekend. Not at the Costco, a small place in her neighborhood that she liked for its corner booth and its lack of background music. She got there first, which she had intended, and she was just sitting down with her order when she saw him through the window walking up the street, and she noticed again that he had a way of moving through a crowd that was unhurried in a way she found difficult to describe. He wasn't slow. He just didn't look like someone trying to get somewhere faster than necessary. They talked for 2 hours. She learned that he had grown up in Halifax and had a younger sister who was studying marine biology in Victoria, that he had moved to Toronto for a job offer. He had spent 3 months deciding whether to take, that he had a very strong opinion about the best way to pour a beer, and was aware that this was a strange thing to have strong opinions about. He asked about her work, and she told him about the community housing organization she had been with for 6 years. The way the funding cycles made everything feel simultaneously urgent and impossibly slow. The residents she had gotten to know over time and thought about when she was trying to remember why the paperwork was worth it. He listened the way some people don't, which is to say he asked follow-up questions that showed he had actually heard the thing she just said. She drove home thinking that she had been wrong about him in the parking lot. Not entirely, maybe. She still thought he'd come in too fast, still thought a signal was a signal, but wrong about what kind of person he was. She had decided in about 11 seconds, and she had been deciding that way about people for a long time, because it was efficient and it was self-protective, and most of the time she was right. She wasn't always right. He called her on a Tuesday night, which surprised her, because people her age didn't call. She almost didn't answer. She answered. "I wanted to ask you something," he said, "and I thought a text might be misread." "Okay, my friend is hosting a thing this Saturday. It's low-key. A few people, some food. I'd like it if you came, but if it feels too soon or too much I understand, and I can text you a meme about parking etiquette instead." Petra stood in her kitchen and looked at the fridge and thought about all the reasons she had for keeping things at arm's length, which were real reasons, earned through real experience, and thought about the corner booth and the 2 hours and the way he'd listened. "What kind of food?" she asked. "I think there's a whole thing with brisket." "I'll come," she said. She went. She met his friends, who were a mix of warm and awkward, in the way that most groups of people in their 30s are at parties. And she ate the brisket, which was excellent. And at some point in the evening, she found herself in a corner, talking to Lawson's friend Dex about urban agriculture, and realized she had completely lost track of time. Lawson appeared at her elbow at exactly the right moment with 2 drinks and didn't interrupt, just handed her one and joined the conversation. She thought on the drive home, I like how he does that. It was small, but small things were what she had learned to pay attention to. He asked her to a hockey game in February, and she said yes without even pretending to check her calendar. He came over for dinner at her apartment and made spaghetti with an amount of confident improvisation that she found both alarming and effective. She met his sister when she came through Toronto for a conference, a 25-year-old named Benny, who shook Petra's hand and said, "He's told me about the parking lot. For what it's worth, you were absolutely right," while Lawson stood behind her looking pained. "Thank you," Petra said. "That's been my position all along." "Traitor," Lawson said to his sister. "I'm her fan," Benny said cheerfully. Spring came slowly that year, the way it does in Ontario, incrementally, like it was still making up its mind. Petra planted things in the small balcony planters she'd had since her old apartment and had never quite figured out. And one Saturday, Lawson sat on her balcony, with a coffee, and watched her read the instructions on a bag of potting mixes, with the concentration of someone diffusing something. "You could just try putting the dirt in the pot," he suggested. "I like to understand what I'm doing before I do it. Is that a general philosophy?" She looked up at him. He was looking back at her, not quite smiling, and she understood that the question was not entirely about the plants. "Yes," she said. "It's gotten me in trouble." "How?" "Sometimes I understand everything about a situation and I still don't move." He was quiet for a moment. A streetcar went by below them. Somewhere a dog was barking at something it had decided was worth barking about. "I think that's called being careful," he said. "I think it's also called afraid." She hadn't planned to say that. She said it anyway, because it was true, and because she was 32, and she had been carrying it around for long enough that it had started to feel heavy. The gap between knowing something and doing something about it. The way she could see clearly and still stand at the edge. Lawson set down his coffee and turned his chair toward her. "Petra, I want to be honest with you. Okay, I drove back around to find you a parking spot that day at Costco. After I pulled in, I sat in the truck for a minute and I thought, that was not great. So I went around the other aisle. You were already gone." She stared at him. "You didn't tell me that. I know. For 6 months you let me be morally superior about the parking spot, and you had actually gone to find me a different one. I didn't want it to seem like I was trying to score points." She looked at him for a long moment. Something in her chest was doing a thing she didn't have an easy word for. A loosening and a tightening at the same time. Like a door opening and the draft coming in. "Lawson, yeah, that's extremely annoying. I know it also might be the nicest thing anyone has done for me in a parking lot. That's a low bar." "It's not," she said. "It really isn't." She reached over and picked up his coffee and took a sip just to do something with her hands. And he laughed, startled, and she laughed too. And for a while they just sat on the balcony while the city made its Saturday sounds below them. Her mother called that evening. Petra told her about the parking lot detail, because she needed to tell someone, and because she knew what her mother would say. "I told you," her mother said. "You didn't tell me anything. You just invited a stranger to Dad's birthday dinner and acted like it was charity. Ruth Ann told me he was a good person. I trusted that." "You meddled," I nudged. "Is there a difference?" Petra thought about the parking lot, the signal she'd had on, the truck swinging in, the way she had driven away tight-handed, and convinced she knew exactly what kind of person he was. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes there isn't." She and Lawson had their first real fight in June, over something that started as a logistical disagreement about a trip they were planning and opened, the way those things do, into something older and larger underneath. She had been putting distance between them. She knew it. She could feel herself doing it while she was doing it, and couldn't seem to stop. He called her on it directly, not unkindly but clearly, and she stood in her living room and felt the familiar pull to deflect and explain it away and knew that she was tired of doing that. "I don't want to need this and have it not work out," she said. "That's the honest answer." "I know," he said. "I don't know how to guarantee you it will." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" She sat down on the arm of her couch and looked at the floor. "I think I'm asking if you'll stay in it even when I'm doing this." Whatever this is," he said. "Yeah, obviously." They didn't resolve it into something tidy. That was the other thing she had learned, or was learning. That resolution didn't always look like a conclusion. Sometimes it just looked like deciding to keep going. In August, her Aunt Donna came to visit from Kelowna, and her mother arranged another family dinner, and Petra brought Lawson, and he sat across from her father talking about the Leafs, with the ease of someone who had been there before, and her Aunt Donna pulled Petra into the kitchen under the pretext of getting more water and said in a low voice, "He's wonderful, Petra. Where did you find him? Costco, Petra said. Her aunt blinked. The parking lot, Petra added. I don't understand. Neither did I, Petra said. For a while. She had written him a letter once, early in the spring, when she was thinking about things more than she was saying them. She had written it longhand on a piece of paper, and then not given it to him for months, had kept it in the drawer of her bedside table, not sure what it was for, or whether it counted as something real, or just as a way of being honest with herself in the dark. She gave it to him in September, on a Sunday afternoon, when they were sitting in his apartment, watching rain come sideways against the windows. She handed it over without saying much, and went to the kitchen to make tea, because she did not think she could watch his face while he read it. She heard him in the other room. She heard the particular quiet of someone reading. The kettle boiled and she poured it and stood with her hands around the mug. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked at him. This is the part where you tell me I should have given you the parking spot, he said, and his voice had the quality it got when he was holding something carefully. That's one of the things I wrote. Yes. And the other things. She looked at him steadily. You read it. I want to hear you say it. Outside, the rain came harder. Someone's car alarm went off briefly on the street below and then stopped. I'm not afraid anymore, she said. That's what I wanted to tell you. I was. I think I was afraid for a long time before I met you too. But I'm not anymore. He crossed the kitchen and she set down the mug on the counter, and he held her face in both his hands for a moment, like she was something he had been waiting to be sure of. And she thought about the parking lot, 11 minutes circling the same row, the perfect spot she had been certain was hers, and the strange, sideways, entirely unplanned way that she had ended up with something so much better than a parking spot. Her mother would call it fate. Petra still wasn't sure she believed in fate, but she believed in the moment she had chosen to roll down the window instead of just driving away. She believed in the Tuesday phone call she had almost not answered. She believed in the letter she had written in the dark and eventually, finally, let him read. She believed in the way he had gone back around to find her a spot and not told her and just tried to do something quiet and good because he thought it was the right thing to do. That was enough. She had come to understand exactly enough.